We're starting at 4 or 4:30.
Did I give people the impression we're sitting at 4:30?
I'm not sure.
Where is everybody?
Well, I can bring that to me, so.
Where's everyone?
I'm worried. I'll go find people. You know what?
I'm pretty sure it's coming. There was nobody over here. I just walked by, nobody's in here. But I figured you told them to come at 4:30. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, I didn't even know that. Yeah. I know, yeah. That's from there, or just. Huh? Sure, it's at 4:30. It's at 4:30, yeah, so I nobody here. Wow, that's tough. That's a great outside.
That's good.
I was like,
Up there, though.
I literally just got an email from her as I walked in here.
Yeah, because I walked in and she's like, where is it?
Oh, that's what they're right.
I thought she mentioned it, but I didn't know if we were like, for real.
Yeah, she said 4:30 last time. I was in the car and then.
I didn't know, I mean, I was just gonna be here anyway.
Yeah. I just saw that. That's me, when I was walking through all.
Well, so you can take your time, have everything. Yeah, now I remember I might be standing here and I said something. And that's all you guys remember. Did I say start at 4:30? Did I say that? Did I say?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should have figured a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember it taking a little bit later, but I didn't remember what time said.
You said confident I'll start till 5, so
No, I didn't.
well, the person's not gonna come on Zoom until 5.
Yeah, she will not come on the 1 to 5, but we can start before that. Yeah, you can go that thing. Yeah, let's sit somewhere. Let's all sit here. Can we sit here? Yeah. I'm thinking here.
Should I log into mine?
Yeah, you don't need yours.
I was listening here. Very rocking out.
No.
Chicken bacon.
Chicken bacon, right?
But you get them.
Good for you.
Can you move?
Yeah, what about some little, I got you, no problem.
So we'll all be sitting here, so she can see all of us.
I don't think that's what I don't like.
You see my.
It's like when you're like. Dehydrated.
Yeah.
Okay, that's much better. This will be it. I'm out.
I think this is everyone we have, Nick, that is not gonna make it.
Jack was taking his list for Zoom.
Yeah, and he said he will be on Zoom, and I didn't see him.
Maybe it's the point.
No, I saw him trying to get in at 4. And then, yes, I finally. So, I think we're still a bit too spread out. I think we're still a bit too spread out. I think let's all sit just all over here. And I'll move to here. That right now. Sure. How do you people this?
What?
I'm not saying.
It's really.
Okay.
You better ask. You better answer.
No. Suckers.
I think you're doing wrong.
Yeah, I can feel on this weekend, with you guys, so I'm gonna see Jamie Mom, so you're out of it's gonna be on your side. What? No.
So let's get started, so we can get some content covered. Together.
And you're supposed to learn.
Huh? Let's just start. So I'm starting the public one. When she gets to, she's got here at 5. Oh, yeah. So we want to get some of the meeting covered. And she probably will be here for an hour, so the purpose is we can get all of the tasks early. Yeah, okay. I go. I'm good. All right. I'm just.
Lauren.
Our topic was age, life, and other lifestyle issues. which if you don't know what that is, I hope you all read readings, but 2 of them were about Gen Z, which most of us are Gen Z, so it's kind of interesting. And then the other one was about work, the other 2 were about work-life balance, which is a big topic in school.
Did we all read the readings? Read the readings? That's me, I saw that.
Oh. But you're at the end now. Yeah. Right. Okay, so as our outside source, I put it in the document, I don't know if you guys read it or not, but it was about Sean McVay, who is the head coach of the LA Rams, who just won the Super Bowl. So he was, after the Super Bowl win, he was actually considering retiring, which is interesting because he is the youngest head coach in the NFL. So, it said a lot about work-life balance, and, we just wanted to know, what do you guys think about that as even the biggest stage? Thinking about retiring so early.
He was what, 26 when he won, right, 25 when he won? That's the only one he has, right? Yeah. I think from like from a football perspective, like, I wanna go out on top, and who knows, like, how many opportunities I have, and like, how many we're gonna have, and he wants to not be like Tom Brady, and I can like see his kids play and stuff like that, so I can understand why he wants to retire so early, because he's already done it, he already has records, he has Super Bowl. His team was thinking about all the acting and dollars in retire, his team was thinking about this person anyway, so I can see why, but I would do it.
So do you think it has more to do with the fact that he like is already successful, or the fact that the work-life balance is a lot for him?
I don't think I've done nothing to his age, I was thinking more along the lines of like, he's such a family man, like everyone said, oh, I'm family man, but like Sean McVay is such a family man, like he doesn't want to be like, I get it, doesn't look like Tom Brady, who like missed so many different opportunities with his kids growing up because he played football, and coaching was even worse. But I don't want people to say. Not totally sure, but when he was talking about retiring, I know his name was like circulating around like broadcasting jobs and things like that, so I know that like different companies and things like that, they were basically throwing the bag at people to come do games, so that's why I think he was at least thinking about it.
So do you think you wanted that other career because it has more of a balance?
Maybe, then also it's probably a lot more money.
Sure.
I think like a little piece of it, just a little piece of it. Maybe he knew what the Rams did to win the Super Bowl, like all the money they spent, all the draft picks they gave up. So it was like, it was either this year or nothing. And he probably saw the future and was like, get out now. Like that.
Yeah, true, but I mean, could have always transferred to another team, do you think?
They could trade him, but
Yeah.
This salary was still high when we traded. He's at the point of his salary was like, no matter what the Rams do, if they trade him or not, they don't pay him. Now you're probably to like, this is people you're paying players, not going to team anymore. Or coach trying to go for the uniform. Excuse me, works out well for him because let's say, let's say he buys himself out of his contract and he goes and works for the Eagles, like. The Rams still have us, even though he bought himself out of his contract, still have a salary cap, which they're really not, so.
Any other thoughts?
Okay, are you ready for, this slide is called Ready for Gen Z in the Workplace. Gen Z has been found to be the most achievement oriented, have greater economic well-being, highly educated, more diverse, the least likely to have worked in their youth. Do you think that has affected them in the workforce?
Wait, what's considered Gen Z?
So actually, good question. Gen Z is classified as people born after 1996 and before 2012.
Oh, yeah, all of you.
Yeah. Pretty much. So the article, if you didn't read it, is about how now most of us are entering the workforce. And it's actually becoming a question whether the employers have to adapt to us or we have to adapt to the workplace, because the way we were brought up is so different than how the workplace is now. Like they're saying all these things and it's just, and then it says that we're the least likely to have worked in our youth due to like a lot of stuff. So how do you think like this is affecting us when we're trying to go into the workforce and look for these jobs?
I think that Gen Z is ready for the workplace, and I think that in terms of having to adapt to the workplace, or does the workplace have to adapt to us? I think it's more so the workplace having to adapt to us in a way, because so many things have changed over the course of the years, and so many traditions are changing, and I think that in terms of, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that there's so much talk about it, and Gen Z actually doing stuff about it, that it's more so like the workplace has to change its way of doing things to kind of be ready for them to come in.
Okay, but do you think that since we're starting working later than the previous generations, you don't think that's affecting us at all when we first started in the workplace? Because we have no
I think
experience?
I think it does affect a little bit, just because, I mean, actually not so much, honestly. Honestly, I don't think so, just because no matter how, when you started working, some of us may still have, you know, previous work experience, or even if like you went to college and have field experience in some sort of way. So I think, you know, with them being highly educated, you know, more diverse, and I don't really think that still make that much of an impact.
Good, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know if, I can't remember if you have this question in your list. And I'm curious about this, so you are Generation Z, and you are kind of working with someone older than you now, so do you feel that on a day-to-day basis, you have no problems, but how do you feel about interacting and working with and people older than you? And do you feel like the values and the ways of thinking or approach to things are different? And you think that's because of the generational difference?
Currently, I started working down at Eastern, and I work with a bunch of people that are older than me, so I think I'll probably be the youngest one forever. And so in terms of that, I think that we do have pretty different mindsets, because it's also a Christian university, and so like there's some that are, you know, very, very religious and that aren't. But I think age kind of plays a role in that too, so the generational differences, there's certain ways of doing things. And it actually, like, just this past year, not this past year, but the year before, Easter became more accepting of, all different kinds of people. So, they just started living that. And so that has to kind of change people that have been there for a long period of time. So like that, they kind of have to start to change their mindset a little bit and being more accepting. But the conversations that I have with my coworkers, they're always asking for my opinion because of the generational difference and like them wanting to change how they do things constantly, because
so they just aren't working anymore because they've done it for so long. So I think that kind of plays a role.
Yeah.
I think that society is going to adapt those. It's already adapting, like, we're gonna. Like, when they have time, so then eventually, like. The issues we have with the old generation, the old school, when we say, like, oh, you do it old school, you know what I mean? I think the old school is gonna be interested in the schools that we know about. So I think that, these big companies and organizations are starting to see like how we work as far as like the upper time of working hard as far as like our generation. And it's okay, like either we can not hire them and be out of work, or we can hire them and adapt to their strengths and adapt our company.
So our next question is from the same article. So in the article, it stated that for Gen Z, we have a lack of work experience. We are very interested in DEI. We have the highest levels of anxiety and depression and have poor communication skills. As all of us are Gen Z, do you guys feel that those are true and having experience in them? Like coming from the older generation telling us this.
I feel like as far as like us being depressed or whatever, I feel like that may be true because the older generations, they don't really, like as far as like with my mom or my stepdad, they don't believe in being depressed or like things like that. So like when we feel as though we're depressed, like or sad or whatever, like that's how we feel. Whereas the older generations, like that's not true. You're just, I don't know. I think that part.
Could it be maybe they code for that better? That's more that they do believe in it?
It could be, or they didn't realize it was depression. They just thought it was something else.
I think that this generation is the only, well, is the only one to put like a reasoning behind it, like in the past, I think. You know, sweep it under the rug, like, oh, I'm not feeling well today, you know, I gotta toughen it out to get through this today. Then this generation kind of put a label on it, and then also gave a definition for it, to where, you know, oh, I'm feeling this way, oh, you're depressed, or you have anxiety or something like that, whereas in the past, they just kind of went through.
Do you think it's better when it comes to the workplace? Does it help you having more labels like that and taking more breaks? Or was it better like the past when they just pushed through it?
I think that that's kind of where the breakup of who you have as a leader, you know, some people, an older leader probably would think that you're just lazy or you don't want to do the work that day. Whereas someone who is younger and in charge may be more understanding of your reasonings.
Yeah.
To kind of go off of those two, I feel like our generation, like they said, like it's been there, but I think our generation is the first to like bring more awareness to it. And so even in terms of like DEI, like I think that the older generation has their more traditional way of doing things, but our generation is the first to kind of start making a difference in how we do those things and making making sure people are treated equally instead of, you know, having that traditional way of doing things, you know, making sure that races are treated the same, genders are treated the same, and you were the first to kind of bring awareness to that and actually start doing something about it. Instead of just kind of, like they said, sweeping under the rug, and just saying, oh, we'll deal with it later, like, so.
So you think that like goes into play when you say the workplace has to adapt to us, like maybe giving mental health days, like that kind of stuff, focusing on DEI. So do you think that is something that should be changing as well?
Yeah.
Anybody else? In this article, there are a lot of suggestions for employers to take into consideration while hiring and working with Gen Z. Do you feel that this is the employer's issue, or should Gen Z be handling things differently? I'm just gonna take the back on the last question.
I have I feel like you didn't really talk about the article itself. Can you just review the article a bit closer so we all have a better impression in mind about
Yes,
there are
Yeah,
no
of course.
suggestions.
yeah,
Like,
so
what suggestions?
the article, so it pretty much went over all the stuff like that we said before about the generalizations of Gen Z. And then it said that now that we are entering the workforce, there's this like difference there, different than millennials joining. And there was a lot of suggestions, and it says like things that they need to do to help us get into the workplace is like having a growth mindset and like coaching us kind of. So like maybe like holding our hands a little more, which is like a bad way to say it, but yeah, just like because it says that a lot of us like don't want to take on these roles and stuff because of the differences. So they said that we need to be coached and like taught, and like they need to say like we're really good with technology. They might not be, but like to communicate with us, it's better through technology, that kind of stuff. But those are kind of the suggestions they were saying that like they just need to do things to help us. So do you think that's something that they should be doing, or should we try to adapt more to them and communicate better through like face to face and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. So I feel like just going right into the workplace, and we still have to remember that the older generation is still trying to figure out technology in a way. So like everything is still pretty, with everything changing constantly within technology itself. Like they didn't have all the technology that we had, so it's like, it's still something that they're working on as well. So like just kind of jumping in and saying like, oh, like they need to communicate with us, you know, only through technology. It's something that Gen Z could work on as well, because we can, you know, be communicating in ways that they understand better too. So I think it's a mixture of trying to do both. So them adjusting to how we are brought up and, you know, how we want to work in a way. And then us kind of adjusting to some of the things, some of their needs that they have as well.
I agree, okay.
All right, then this gets into the next article, which I'll explain a little bit. So it's about coaching Gen Z athletes, which there's a lot of athletes in here, so we should relate to this a little more, but that one was just kind of about how coaches kind of have to take a different approach to coaching Gen Z athletes because of a lot of the characteristics we already said. They stated things like, sorry, I don't know if you guys read the article or not, but they said the coach expectation performance relationship cycle, which is coaches form expectations based on performance and information and personal cues of their athletes. Then the expectations influence their coaching behaviors and then affect athlete performance. And then in the final step, the athlete performance reinforces the original expectation of the coach. But they said that might not apply to Gen Z because of the way we communicate, the way we handle different situations. Like it says that we not always accepting criticism best, that kind of stuff. So then question, do you think that the coach expectation performance relationship cycle would be beneficial to use for coaches of Gen Z athletes?
Can you say the cycle one more time? So it's expectation.
So the coach like has their expectations based on their athletes. And then they coach them a certain way because of those expectations, and then the athletes performance should reflect that. And then,
Actually, get some expectations.
yeah.
So what was your question?
So do you think like that cycle could be used with Gen Z athletes?
Is it not used with us already? Because I feel like,
It was in the article saying that like, they're trying to figure out if that would be. Cause I mean, they try it, but like, I don't know if it's different.
I don't know, from an athletic standpoint, like, I feel like my coaches coach me based on like how my skill level and put me in the best position I can be to be successful. Both my sports, so I think that they do, I mean, that's like, if I can break it down to you, expectation wise, like. My coach wants me to be the best of the line, right? So we're able to do different specific drills, do the shot my weaknesses, so I can do that in line, and then. Probably doing that entails me playing better, which then entails me being like a leader, playing better than teams, feed up my energy. And now, and because I'm playing better, the team feels energy, as a team, we're playing better, and now that team playing better, we're hitting, not only my first expectations, when I get like this as far as like winning games and you attack camp and all that stuff that they talked about. So I feel like, I mean, I guess it's based on the sport, maybe, like, really ask some kind of the sport, or you could tease it, but for me, like, I think that both my coaches actually do job.
Yeah, I think in the article, they're also like trying to say that, Gen Z, like when they get that feedback from their coach or something, it's different than it was in the past. So like, maybe we're more likely to go up and talk to a coach about certain issues and that kind of stuff. So I think that's what they're saying, like breaks the cycle sometimes. If that's how, that's how I understood it.
Yeah, like I'm sure we all heard this phrase, coaches were so much tougher back then and we did way more, it was more harder. So what our generation's doing now, we're getting into the coaches to communicate more with us, more of an open relationship. I think that's what, and the big question is, do you think that's more beneficial to athletes than coaching as a whole?
Wait, what's the difference?
Like, not, so like, should it be like all business, kinda, as in, your coach gives you, the instructions, and let's say you do the instruction, and, if it doesn't go well, you get criticized, like it happens in the real world, or should it be more, I guess,
Like
more,
setting up the expectations and then
Yeah.
talking about it and then like all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but I can, so when I was at Morgan, my track coach, he wasn't very good at communicating, like, he would tell me to do something, but I wouldn't know exactly like what he wanted, so I'd be like, can you break it down for me so that I can understand it, and he'll just get an attitude. And he was terrible, like, I feel as though he didn't really know his athletes, like, how we started coaching, because he's like in his 60s, he's kind of old. So he's still coaching from how he coached when he first started coaching, but now here, Coach Stafford and Coach Imani, they have a high expectation for me because I am a good athlete here. Okay. And so they do have high expectations for me, but they also, I wouldn't say they treat me differently, but they also are able to teach me and help me become better. So like, I feel as though I have a better relationship with the coaches here than I did with Morgan, because the coaches here are just better personally, and they understand the type of athlete that I am, the type of coaching that I need to be better.
So you think something like that cycle would be better for athletes than just kind of like, oh, you need to do this, but like.
I think it depends on the athlete, on how, like, their type of coaching, because some sports are like football, they might like coaches who just yell at them, whereas other sports are like, no, don't yell at me, like, you know?
I was gonna say, I feel like this question is such a broad question because everybody. Gen Z is so different than most, and so I think that, like she said, it depends on the athlete, so. I mean, with me being a graduate assistant, I played last year. But we've also had like people come in throughout the years that are so different. So like, I wanna say like my class and the class before me, we were all pretty much coached to stay away growing up. So like, kind of coaches being hard on us. And then that kind of impacted like that we have to work for what we want. And I think a lot of the players that we've had come in, you know, honestly, after my class, I wanna say that there's a big change in coaching there. So like a lot of them have come in like, entitled in a way. I don't wanna say like entitled because not all of them are, but like, you know, a lot of them are coming in expecting to play. Like that's just, you know, and they don't think they have to work for it. And so I think that there's a big difference within Gen Z itself because these kids are only 2 to 3 years younger than I am. And like they weren't brought up coached the same way. So I think it depends on the athlete because Gen Z is so different because the span of it is so many years and there's just that big change and that big gap in how people communicate to athletes.
Going forward, like, I think, depending on the relationship you have with your coach. Like my coach, like my football coach knows like, not to yell, like usually I'm the one to be doing anything across him, but you can always just yell at me and just have a conversation with me. That's one thing we coach hard, but like, students playing me yelling in my face and I'm doing this, and that, like, it's not, like, what are we really solving here, personally. I have teammates who like, need to be yelled at and like, need to be like told like, yo, like, you suck, and so then they start playing better, in a sense, UG said, like, so we'll start playing better. So that's kind of relationship they have with my coach. Even track line, my coach, the way to have my practice is very unique, but even when I'm having a bad day, okay, like, you had a bad day, and trying to put like a different switch to it. Like when you start up and you're still fine, and you're gonna take another one, you don't want to be fine. So I think that comes down to the relationship and like we said, they were not coached like how we were coached growing up, like, so there's definitely a different kind of intake for that. Like maybe you get more like maybe don't make me yell that, or you need to yell and just have a conversation, and don't usually yell at me. Or there may be kids who really yell at them, because you don't yell when they don't really take it serious, you know? So I think there needs such a wide gap. It's just based on those different have opinions from coach and sport.
Our next question kind of relates to, I know Rachel was already kind of saying about it, but should coaches of Gen Z athletes change their coaching styles to adapt to the athletes? And in the article, it was about tennis players, which is kind of like a very specific sport. I feel like it's very different than a lot of other sports, but they did mention the entitlement factor. That could have been, tennis is usually a higher income sport. But that is something that they're noticing in athletes, just like those kind of characteristics, like don't want to work hard, don't really have much motivation outside of the initial practice, that kind of thing. Do you think the coaches should adapt to that or kind of stick with their guns?
In my opinion, it's a coach's job to adapt to the athletes they have, or like each year, each team is even different than what you have in previous years. So I think that. But throughout my year, like my freshman class, like Chris Switch, like have jokes with and different things, but the freshman class now, like just be careful what he says, make sure they're what feelings and like stuff like that. Like it's a small thing. So as a good pretty good adapt to that you have and that's like hopefully you have, but still keep your two principles, you know, like you still yeah. I'm just, he's still hundreds, but he's still. He's a different about doing, you know, like. I you know, my freshman year, like. The whole different swag we had, things like that, as far as like shits out and like. Showing up and like different stuff like that, like, that was not a thing, like, I would, like, could never happen. But because I think about and how the culture we fit and stuff like that. I know from us, I just play and don't want to play for them, yeah, and things like that, and so. They play, kicking ball, right, well, we practice it, right?
And I don't think you have to drastically change, because remember in college athletics, you can pick and choose who you're adding to your team. So I do agree with Dan, you gotta kind of modify the attitude, but like the everything, like the principles, the morals and the values, it stays the same. And if those kind of kids don't fit, like that kind of program, you don't have to take them, or you can cut them. Yeah, yeah.
Reasonably, but high school wise, you
Yeah,
don't
you don't get that.
So then after you have to change like who you are, you could be. You could be like a hard nosed coach one day, and next year be like a softer. I got a good example for me is, in high school, my coach don't really 7-on-7s or. Anytime or something like that, I was begging, just to get back and will help us, but. Now, since I graduated, all the Jewish 7-on-7s, all the Jewish team programs, all that stuff like that, it's just based on like the culture change and stuff.
Anybody else? Generation Z athletes, do you feel that you and teammates possess some of these skills? And if so, how do your coaches adapt to them?
Sorry, you gotta explain what your
Oh,
question is.
oh,
What
the
are
skills
your
is,
skills?
as in, like you need better communication from a coach. Like you need to have certain needs that a coach kind of needs to, you think a coach should adapt to and help you. But then it's kind of communication and how you talk to, how you treat it. And do you think every coach should kind of adapt to you, or do you think, and how do you think a coach can adapt to what you need to become a better athlete and to perform at your best?
Like some of the things that they mentioned, for the coaches, like they have to motivate their athletes, communicate with them and work on, a big thing that they mentioned a lot was attention span. I don't know if that's COVID, like, I mean, I myself feel like I don't have a good attention span anymore. But just like all those kind of things, like, do you feel like your teammates like want a lot of these things because of the Gen Z, or just you think that? Any experiences with that?
I think coaches do have to adapt to them, because an athlete today, before they can remember something or store it, they gotta hear it 17 times.
Yeah.
So you gotta, like, that's something you definitely gotta adapt to. So I think I mean, in college athletics, I don't wanna sound like that, like just recruit smarter kids or recruit kids who you know are doing similar things to you, who are up 6 days a week, who are lifting in the morning, who are doing all those things. And I definitely do sometimes that the coach does have to adapt, but then you can, in high school, you can just pick. I mean, in college, you can just pick the athletes.
And do you think that happens here? Like, do you think it's been changing?
I think so. I wasn't here for the first head football coach, but the athlete has changed. I think that they're a lot more emotional.
Yes. I can second that, I was here.
They're a lot more emotional, and then like there's more space for them to be emotional, and that to me that's different. Even like when I played, like in high school, like there was never a space. The coach left his door open for you to come talk to him, and it was never anything like that. So I mean, I guess they gotta adapt to each other. They gotta find a mutual ground where they can meet and keep it positive. I guess.
Do you think that is being more emotional makes it harder for you to coach them?
Sometimes. Yeah, I was about to say sometimes. Sometimes you want to see like, yeah, like sometimes when you just want to be like direct, like I told you this 15 times, but in the back of your head, you gotta remember it takes them 17 times to learn stuff, so.
I think like with the emotional piece, like, it is very hard, especially like So softball is all females and there is emotion constantly. So, I mean, it's hard as a coach to try and you really can't yell at them, like, you really can't, I mean, like, and that's something that we've talked about, like, as coaches, like, we've talked about the fact that, like, you can't yell at these kids anymore. Because there's so much emotion that gets brought into the game, like, and like, yes, like Jenny B like has like the anxiety and the depression and like all of that kinds of stuff, and I feel like coaches are kind of being more weary of that now in terms of how they coach, because, you know, back before, like, there wasn't awareness brought to it, so I was like, okay, I can really yell at this kid, I mean, granted, you shouldn't be like screaming your head off at these kids, but like, sometimes they need somebody that's more stern to like get it through, so because it takes 17 times for these kids to understand something. But maybe if you're a little bit more stern about it, they'll get it the first or second time, hopefully. You know, but like with softball, it's so hard to try and accommodate to every single player because there's so many different emotions involved in the game.
And, yeah. And I was thinking, with athletes becoming more emotional nowadays, it's even harder for the coach. Let's say you have a team of 30 athletes, and you gotta treat them all different according to how emotional they are. I think that makes it very hard for the coach to pay attention to everybody, and then it becomes almost like a casual coaching style, and you're just undermining yourself a lot of times because I've seen it happen.
I feel like
several
that
times.
if a coach, they say, there's a. Sorry, there. I feel like if a coach is able to really take the time to learn their athletes and how they take coaching, that's a great coach. Like, 'cause you can't treat us all the same, because we're not the same. Like, and Morgan, my coach, he would yell at me, and I'm just like, why are you yelling at me? And then I start crying, because it's like, I hate being yelled at. Like, that's not gonna help me understand what I did wrong. You don't have to yell at me. But whereas another girl on the team, he can yell at her and she's fine, but that's because he didn't know us personally, he just knew us on the track.
Yeah.
Or the field, that's it. So I feel like if a coach is willing to actually sit down and learn all their athletes, then that's a great thing.
I think with the college, like that's where the system part comes in, and so like. You want your athletes to play with emotion, you want them to play fired up, that's when they're playing the best, when they're having fun, and just enjoying the game. That's when they're playing the best, so you don't wanna take that emotion back there from the athletes, but. At the same time, like, you wanna make sure they're staying within the rules of like your system. So, what I'm gonna add is like, as a coach, you know what you can and can't control, as far as like. If the athlete does this or that, or you still wanna have the emotion, so you. As a collegiate coach, you wanna recruit kids, so like, okay. He's passionate, he's energetic, but I can control this, like, I can tell him, okay, like, you're good, you can listen to me, like, and. Or I said, you're not playing, you're playing with the wrong edge, you know, so. I think that's where the system aspect comes as far as like, you wanna get kids, we're gonna fit the system, but still gonna for themselves. You have a picture of the LSU coach up there, and I think that's a great example, because like. I don't watch a lot of WNBA basketball, I don't watch basketball as it is, to be honest with you. But. Like if it's on, I watch it, but I don't like, it's not anything crazy to me. She's by far one of the most passionate coaches I've ever seen, coach. And like, I can tell, like, as an athlete myself, I'm watching her coach these games, like, not even much about like, just. The regular season, like, yeah, like, I wanna play for her, because like, she's passionate, she cares about the game just as much as I do, like, I wanna like. Now I can do my stuff again on the screen and tell her and say, and look at, I can do all the different feelings I have, because my coaches right behind me doing the same thing, so I think that. As far as like, I know it's kind of broad, like, as far as their coaching standpoint, like, you wanna recruit. The biggest system that you can control from a high school standpoint, like. You want to get more of a destiny first as far as like this, like, know your athletes, know what they can and can't do, know how they are, know how to treat them, like. I like this one, like, there's no need for you to yell, like, I'm sorry, there's nothing you're gonna cross. And like, at this stage of my career, like, I know the difference between like hard coaching and like you barely knowing at me. So like, I know the difference, especially in football, but there's no real reason for me to go. We're both grown men, like, actually, like, I'm not gonna else back. But you coaching on Maverick competition, like, that's different, that's a different type of coaching. I don't know, it's kind of cool. Down there. That's what I think.
So, right for discussion went almost there at 5 o'clock. I want us to, I understand that we are all athletes, but you will not, we all play and probably coach. But, think about if you're gonna get to coaching, think about if you're gonna play sports, you're gonna, most of you will not be athletes for your whole entire life. So we need to look at this article and think about how this can apply to other workplace environments. I want us to take a step back and think about, do you like this article? Do you like this article about coaching Generation Z athletes? Like, not, don't like?
I just don't like how like Gen Z is such a wide range, 96.12, so like. You can't coach someone from 96 the same way you coach someone from 12. So that's the only thing.
I don't think it's real, I think it's made up.
Generation Z. Yeah. But there's always that individual difference and, but they always talk about like they give each generation a name. And sometimes the range is so big that we can't really have the whole decade. So that's one aspect. Anyone hate this article? There's a reason why I put this in the reading list. Anyone don't like this article?
Well,
I don't like it. Why? In the beginning of the semester, we talked about stereotype and bias.
okay.
And I think this article is finding it's a reflection of the bias. Yeah. Because Harvard was talking about this reciprocate relationship, right? You have expectations based on how your athletes perform, and that includes how you coach. And based on the result that can reinforce or help you to adjust your expectation and coaching style. So at the beginning, they need to realize that this is a two-way relationship. However, did they interview any athletes? They did. They just interviewed the coaches whose mean age was 45 years old, and only one woman. So I don't think, and I think they should have interviewed some athletes and ask those athletes, like what we just did, what do you think of the coach? Because when you see a problem, it's always two-way, especially if you're talking about communication. You can't just blame the other side that you have poor communication without first thinking about the problem on your side. So I think to me, this study, the findings, I'd like to question every single word it has. And I think you also, I think you also need to critically think about its findings. It mentions Generation Z is always on their cell phone and use social media. For communication, I'm wondering how they could define what is a good communication skill. Inability to deal with adversity. I think we're the only ones. So, well, I think this finding is very, very biased. Because it only interviewed the coaches.
I agree, but I think it's showing their side.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, this is how it is. I just think, yeah, interviewed some coaches, this is what the coaches think of our generation. If it's right or wrong, but I don't think they decided. I don't think we decided, I think it's a decision whatsoever, but it's just, I saw it as a point of view of what a coach thinks of question out there.
Okay.
I do question it a lot. I don't think, and again, as we said, I think the generation should be a bit broken down. So like. But yeah, I totally agree. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that is your last.
Oh, brother.
There we go, Travis, there we go.
And then,
Want to say something? Yeah, unmute it to can't speak, if you can talk. No, he can come, he can unmute himself.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, I can barely hear you now, but basically what I was saying is if you treat like younger athletes differently just because of their personality and motivations, you will never create a strong team environment. Like the older players will never accept the younger players because of that special treatment, and there'll be no team unity.
I agree with that.
I've seen it happen on my teams before.
yeah, I agree.
Huh?
Brother, they don't agree with you.
You guys don't agree?
Oh,
What perspective, I got you, what perspective you take, like a crazy perspective, or like, a youth perspective, or like a high school perspective, like what perspective you take?
I can't really hear you too well, but my last year at Bloomsburg, there was these two freshman receivers that walked all over the team just because of their talent. And like a lot of the freshmen were treated differently. They were taken easy on. The seniors were screamed at, and we never accepted the freshmen. And there was no team unity. We went 3-8 that year. That does not lead to success.
We're gonna test.
Thanks. I think the same with high school perspective. Honestly, I don't care what age group it really is. I don't think you can. Once you start treating certain players differently, I think it messes up with the what's the word I'm looking for? The synchronization of the team.
What do you mean differently?
So, we'll probably continue you two or this discussion after, Dr. Taylor's, presentation. So, she's here already, but can you two move back a little bit so she can see you? So we talk about Generation Z, and this is mostly on the age part. But with her presentation, she said she's gonna make it more interactive, so make sure you participate and you ask questions. How that will help you is you will make connections with Temple. She has great relationship with that, with that department. And it's just, you are the face, you represent ESU, okay? So please do yourself a favor and interact, ask questions, answer questions. And she will mostly focus on the work-life balance, okay, which I know will change the direction of the discussion a little bit, but it's still it's less about sports, right? But more about how you deal with the workplace culture. So I will let her in right now. And Jacko, you can participate. You can ask questions, you can answer questions, just unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's why I raised my hand earlier, because like I can't really hear the class too well, so I didn't want to start cutting people off if I just started talking.
Hi, Dr. Taylor. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are y'all?
We're good.
Hey,
Can you hear us fine?
I can. Yes, I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay, great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Is it beautiful there like it is here?
Yeah, it's beautiful weather, finally getting a lot nicer.
Yes, it finally feels like spring.
Yeah. So we're in a classroom and Jacko is joining us through Zoom because of some personal issues, but I hope that's not, I don't think that will be a problem. We are in a classroom and we have an out camera.
We have an L camera in the classroom and it just follows people who talk, or people who move. Why don't you say something? Say hi. Yeah, we have about 8-10 people here. So do we want to start with some brief self-introductions? Do we have time for it? Yeah, I think we can do that, and then Dr. Taylor, you can probably start your presentation.
Sounds perfect.
So maybe we go around the classroom and introduce ourselves, like your name and what you do in sports and what you want to do.
I started, go ahead. Everyone's gonna pick me up.
Aaron, can you please maybe stand up?
Excuse me, my name is Aaron. I'm the graduate assistant for the sport management department here. I want to work in college athletics. I think that's it.
My name is Jess. I am involved in the sport management club and I'm a undergraduate and graduate student. I'm the president of the club. Hi, I'm Destiny. I'm the graduate student working for sport management. I'm a member of the track team. I have no idea what I want to do in sports yet.
My name is Rachel. I'm the graduate assistant for the softball team, and I'm the graduate assistant for athletic events and facility operations. And I would like to work in college athletics as well.
I am Loren, I'm an international student from Albania. I'm the graduate assistant of business management department, and I'm on the soccer team. And I like to continue my career in soccer, whether as a player or as a coach.
I'm Quill, and I'm a graduate assistant with the football team.
I'm Joe, and I'm also a grad assistant with the football team on the defense. Start with Darren, we're grad assistant with chemistry and wellness. Yeah, I'm all.
Oh, you have it all.
Yeah, I'm there. Nice to meet you.
Jacko, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jocko Satamini. I am a retired football player, active disc golfer, and I am looking to be in sports marketing and advertising someday.
Awesome. Well,
Right.
thanks so much for having me tonight. I guess it's a short presentation. I'm hopeful it'll be interactive, but if you at any time have questions, comments, that sort of thing, just feel free to stop me, get my attention, and we can kind of talk through any questions that anyone might have, if that works.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, give me just a second to try to share my screen.
Yeah, I think you can share. If not, let us know.
All right. All right, can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, perfect. So just a brief agenda of what I want to talk about. So I kind of want to set the stage both with myself. So I think something that's really important about research is considering your positionality and how that impacts the research that you do and why you do it. And then talk about why exploring employee experiences is important, and what I know y'all read some research that I've done. So what my research says, what other folks' research has found, and then thinking about ways forward in the sport industry if we want to think about maximizing employee effectiveness, maximizing employee well-being and job satisfaction, cutting down on things that we know are bad, like burnout, workaholism, and that sort of thing. So to set the stage a little bit about me, I'm originally from a small town in Wisconsin. So Philly is an adventure for me every day. And when I say small town, I mean like people drive tractors to school, small town. So I was a two-sport college athlete. I played volleyball and I ran track, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I thought that I would go and I would get my master's, much like y'all, work as a graduate assistant. And then I wanted to coach college volleyball. So I went and I did that. I coached for 2 years at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and I worked with the volleyball team. And I discovered that I hated coaching. I hated the lifestyle of it. I hated the 7 days a week, the long bus rides from Southern Ohio to Buffalo, New York. It was a lifestyle that I wasn't prepared to kind of take on. And I knew that I wanted a family. And the head volleyball coach for Miami, she's very, very successful. She's been there for a long time. She's one of the winningest coaches in Division I volleyball, but she's single. And that's because her life has really been coaching volleyball. And I saw that and I just thought, this isn't for me, but I think I really like this research thing. I like teaching. So I went and got my PhD at the University of Tennessee. And started looking more at gender issues in sport, ideas of employee well-being, and that sort of thing. So where my line of research kind of shifted from primarily looking at women to exploring more more holistically looking at employee experiences is when I got to Temple. And so I started working again as an assistant volleyball coach at Swarthmore College. So it's a small D3 school right outside of Philly. And my husband also works there. He's a full-time assistant swim coach. So he kind of lives and breathes a lot of the research that I do. And when we really started to have more conversations about work-life balance and the longevity of his coaching career and that sort of thing was when we started to have kids. So we have 2 kids, and working full time in athletics and having a family is something that you don't always see. It's very challenging. And so that has kind of been the driving factor behind a lot of the research that I do. A lot of the research questions that I have come from our personal experience. And it obviously is a little bit different. He's at a Division III school. And so he has summers off mostly and doesn't do a lot of like road trips with recruiting. So the hours that you put in at the Division I level, that can look much, much different. But I wanted to start out asking a couple questions. What have you heard about working in the sport industry? So whether you've heard it in class, whether you've heard it from folks in the athletic department who you work with, but what is it like to work in the sport industry? Go ahead.
I heard that the grind does not stop.
Good. What else? What else have we heard about working in sport?
I heard a lot of hours, not a lot of money.
Okay, good. The grind is there, a lot of hours, not a lot of money. What else?
We had our our athletic director came to the class last week. And at a certain point he saw his topic was work-life balance, and he said he can't do it because there's no work-life balance. I hope it's a topic for the other week, so that's what I heard.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people, they say that balance is not achievable if you have a career in athletics. They call it work-life imbalance is really what they talk about, where it's a lot of time in the office, not a lot of time at home, potentially like missed holidays or birthdays or that sort of thing. But we do know that in this post-COVID world, the industry is booming, right? We see tons of applications for positions. We see increases in the diversity of positions offered, right? So we see a ton of like sport analytics jobs. We see a ton of athlete well-being. Have any of you seen, maybe you saw it on social media, Clemson is building an NIL, a new NIL facility on campus. So we see new positions with the passing legislation of things like NIL. And then we see that the jobs are highly sought after. So we'll see 100+ applications for an entry-level position that has, a lot of hours required, not a lot of pay. I always say working in sport is sexy, right? I don't know if any of you have ever kind of thought of it like that before. It's there, the jobs are very appealing. It seems like a really, really great industry to work in, but a lot of what y'all are talking about is really important to consider, right? So even if working in the sport industry is a desirable career path for many individuals. So a lot of you talked about how your current athletes or former athletes, maybe you have sort of a passion for helping others or a drive to pursue a coaching career or something like that. Everybody kind of comes at it from a unique angle, but working in the industry is very desirable. But there are a lot of challenges associated with that. So we know there's a lot of long hours, weekend work, frequent travel. I think the perfect example right now is thinking about conference realignment. So realigning the Big Ten to now include Southern Cal and UCLA. I don't know if any of y'all work in equipment or work with equipment, but the way that equipment typically works for sports like football is someone literally drives a truck with the equipment before the game. Think about what that drive is going to be like from Southern California to, I mean, even if you're talking the westernmost Big Ten schools, Michigan, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, right? Those schools are hours away. So there is a lot of travel associated with it, the presence of an overwork climate. So you work until midnight at a basketball game, and you got to be in the office the next day at 8 a.m. to start work on, you know, prepping for your next event. How many of you have ever heard a coach at the end of the season, they're in their end of the season press conference, and you know, maybe something was disappointing, they didn't finish as well as they wanted, or there was an upset, they lost, and the coach says, somebody says, you know, what are you going to do for next season? How are you going to make up for this? And the coach says, we're going to work harder. What does that mean? What do you think that means when the coach says they're going to work harder? What do they mean by that? Go ahead, Jacko.
I was just saying that I've heard a coach say that, but they probably just use that because it covers everything.
Okay. Anybody
Not like
want to elaborate? What do you think they mean when they say they're going to work harder? What does that mean?
I think they mean putting more hours, everyone put more hours.
Exactly. To them, that means harder. Working harder means longer hours. We're gonna, whether they're going to practice more, whether they're going to lift more, whether they're going to condition more, whether they're going to have the development staff call donors more often, whether they're going to work to sell more tickets, whatever that looks like. When they say work harder, they mean longer hours, right? And so what we know is that all of these things have negative effects on employees. So if we're thinking about we want to increase employee well-being, we want to increase employee satisfaction, we want more balance, we have to decrease the presence of an overwork climate. We have to think about how we're going to decrease burnout, decrease workaholic tendencies, right? All of those things that lead to more satisfied employees, healthier employees, more engaged employees, more productive employees. All of those things come from a better organizational culture. They come from better balance, more supportive policies for employees, all sorts of things like that. So I think we kind of have this weird space in sport where we know that balance leads to positive outcomes. And if we know that, why don't we just create better balance? When I talk to students a lot or research participants or that sort of thing, that question always kind of comes up is, why don't we just create better balance? What kind of barriers do you think are really in place to prevent just this creation of better balance? Why can't we just wake up one day and say, okay, everybody's going to work fewer hours, we're going to travel less, we're going to do all those sorts of things? What do you think? Why do we see so many challenges?
I think it's just the culture of sports in general. Just people always say work harder to get better, so I think it's just a culture thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was talking about it with some students today, and I'm sure you've all heard the saying, work smarter, not harder. I feel like in sport, we haven't really figured out what that means to work smarter. How do we work more efficiently? How do we allow employees to utilize all their vacation, or to telecommute to the office 2 days a week, or, you know, do something like that? So this line of research, looking at employee well-being and looking at work-life balance, really started looking at coaching moms. So it was qualitative research by Dr. Marlene Dixon, who's at Texas A&M, and then Jenny McGarry, who's at UConn. They started talking to women, Division I women head coaches, and what their work suggested was that women who were also mothers face a ton of barriers stemming from individual, organizational, and societal expectations. For example, coach moms reported as though they felt like they couldn't meet expectations in both their coach and their role as a coach, and then their role as a mom. So they felt like they were falling short because they were trying to do too many things. They had too many work duties, and then they had too many at-home duties. Or they felt as though they weren't receiving the support necessary from their athletic department. So perhaps, for example, they were traveling outside of hours when you have daycare coverage. And so that was challenging for them, is what do you do on the weekends when you have to go to an away tournament, but your daycare is closed? Or if you have a game that starts at 7 and your daycare closes at 5:30, how do you navigate that? And so what they did is they just kind of continued to talk to women in this role and started more discussing the barriers associated with being a working mom, and specifically a working mom in the role of coaching. And that really got people thinking, but what about dads? So if we're saying that a lot of these issues are related to childcare, what about coaching dads? Or what about working fathers? And so Dr. Dixon and one of her former PhD students, who's now at the University of Tennessee, Dr. Jeff Graham, started to explore the experiences of working fathers. And again, they specifically looked at coaches, so dads who were head coaches. And what they found is there were challenges associated with being a dad who also works full-time in the sport industry, but they were different. The obligations to the family were different. And so whereas moms typically provide a lot of the childcare, what they found for dads is the dads provided a lot of discipline. And so it was challenging for the dad to kind of swoop in and be the disciplinarian and then leave and go to practice. So a lot of what the dads talked about was missing events and then having to kind of step in, and in the good cop, bad cop routine, they had to be the bad cop. And so it was kind of creating this negative relationship with their family because they weren't able to be there for everything. Where the wives talked about, or the coaching moms, talked about their inability to kind of do it all. The coaching dads talked about all having supportive partners. So they had a partner at home who picked up a lot of the childcare. So from that perspective, they weren't expected to do a lot of the childcare because they were working. But a lot of what they talked about was challenges with being the disciplinarian and kind of coming and going in that aspect. So in thinking about some of our conversations, and your conversation last week with the athletic director, what is it like to work in sport? And can we talk about balance? So what some of the work that I have done explored was looking at how do we classify this balance? Or if there is a lack of balance, how do we talk about it? So what I came up with some colleagues was this idea of an adaptive lifestyle. So in a previous study, I talked to women athletic directors, and one thing that one of the women said really stuck with me is that sometimes your work life is going to be all consuming, and sometimes your home life is going to be all consuming, and you have to adapt your lifestyle in that moment to embrace where you are. So if you are a football coach, obviously football game day is going to be very consuming, but perhaps the next day, Sunday, or in the off season, you get to work with be with your family, engage in whether it's birthday celebrations or holidays or just an everyday Sunday. that you get to spend with your family when you're not coaching. So this idea of adaptive lifestyles is that folks who work in athletics have to constantly be adapting their home life and their work life to try to meet the demands of that specific instance. So it's going to be constantly changing based on the position that you're in, what family means to you. Maybe it doesn't mean a nuclear family in the way that we think about a mom and dad and kids. Maybe it means you have elderly care for your parents, or maybe it means that you are a single person, but you still want to take time for your extended family on holidays, or that sort of thing. So we've started to move away from this idea of balance, but move more into this idea of adapting to the specific moment in time where you're at. So some of the research that I've done moving away from qualitative work. So qualitative work is really great, but in a qualitative study, you might only talk to 10 or 15, maybe 20 participants. Some of the more recent work that I've done, we've tried to talk to more folks in athletic departments. And so we've talked to, in this study, we talked to 4,300 people through survey research. And what we did in this project is we created archetypes based on employees' positions within the athletic department, and illustrated how throughout your time in an athletic department, your experiences of things like burnout, workaholism, job satisfaction, work-life conflict, work-life balance are going to shift. And this is one of my favorite studies that we've worked on, because what we were really able to do is paint a picture of the experiences of employees at each of these levels, and illustrate, okay, at this level, at the entry level, it's majority women. So it was over 55% women at the entry level, and then we get up to the senior level and there's fewer than 50% women. So something happens during careers in athletics that is kind of pushing women out. And there's been research to suggest what they call a leaky pipeline. So we get women into the pipeline, but they struggle to progress through the department. So I really enjoyed this project because we were able to kind of pinpoint some pain points for employees, specifically around having children and what that meant for them in terms of flexibility in their workplace. So I know you read one specific article for class, so I wanted to dive into that article and think about what the findings of this article really meant, because I know no one wants to read a 40-page article, myself included, especially when we're talking about structural equation modeling or latent profile analysis or more sophisticated stats. But what we really wanted to do with this project was look at the way that the presence of work-family conflict impacts relationships within athletics. So we know that there is, and we knew this from previous research, that higher levels of workaholic tendencies lead to more burnout. So workaholism is things like you answer emails on the weekend, you engage in overtime without actually being paid for overtime. You have an inability to distance yourself from your work. And what that leads to then is higher levels of burnout, because you're working more, you're not taking time for yourself. And so based on this research, what we found is that the relationship between workaholism and burnout is mediated or impacted by work-family conflict. So thinking about, what does this actually mean? We think about work-family conflict or this lack of balance as a bad thing. So when people say that they work a lot and they don't have time for their family, we think about that as a really negative thing. But in this instance, what we found is that employees who were taking more time away from their work and letting their family kind of impact their work. So whether that was, they were missing, they were bringing their family into the workplace, or they were missing work events for family, or that sort of thing. We found that actually took away, that lowered their levels of burnout. And so we always think of this work-family conflict as a negative, but in this case, it was actually allowing employees to stay in the industry longer because they weren't engaging in such high levels of overwork. I want to stop here and I want to kind of talk through like your perceptions of this. What does this mean for you? Because in terms of employees and employers, the athletic department, I think this piece has a lot of implications in how we encourage employees to take vacation and how we encourage employees to unplug at the end of the night. So I'm sure all of you are like I am, constantly checking your phone, constantly checking your email, that sort of thing. So how do we support our employees so that they can recharge and engage with their family so that the next day they can come back rested? So I want to stop here and open it up for questions or talk through, like maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say partially mediated. What does that mean? What kind of stood out to you as you're thinking about these topics?
So what can we do to help people balance their work and family? Because research shows that it contributes to lower burnout and make people staff quite happy. Based on your experience as an athlete and some of you are coaching or working in the athletic department, what do you think? And from a more practical standpoint, do you think there's anything you wish your boss could be doing, or the athletic department, or you wish you can, what kind of benefits you wish you could have? Yeah, Rachel.
I think that something that could help would be like having a work phone. So like not every job has a work phone, so people are using their personal phones a lot. And so I think that can cause a big issue, because giving out your personal number, it kind of opens the door for anybody to really call you at any time. And so, you know, somebody who may be like a night owl, they may want to call you at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like, hey, I need this scheduled, or hey, I need this, hey, I need that. I think having a work phone kind of allows you to, hey, this is my work number, and you have like a set hours. So like say your scheduled hours are like 9 to 6, right? So your work phone then turns on from 9 to 6. And then from 9 to 6, like after 6 o'clock, it automatically goes on do not disturb, like on its own kind of thing. And so, or like you have it set up that way to do that, so that those calls you're not seeing constantly on your phone, or you're not getting texts constantly that you see. It allows you to have that time to just go and sit with your family. And then I think, you know, in terms of like a laptop, like having a work laptop and just leaving it at work. You know what I mean? It stops people from checking their email, you know, on their computer and just saying like, hey, like, or you can have it on your phone, but same thing, like there is an option on certain, on certain like mail sites in a way to where you can like put it on do not disturb, so that you're not seeing those emails constantly pop up on your phone after you're home. So I think having those would benefit a lot of workplaces and kind of decrease the workaholism.
Yeah, I think technology is both a blessing and a curse, right? Because it allows us instant access to a ton of information, but like you said, it's really challenging to ignore those texts and phone calls if you're getting them on your personal phone and it's dinging and you see them. So I think that is really important, is to find time, and it can look different for everyone. And so this is, again, where kind of the adaptive lifestyles come in. So if you are someone who maybe you wake up early and you like to work out in the morning, and that like 5 to 7 or 6 to 8, whatever that time frame looks like for you, that's a non-negotiable, that's you time. If you want to work out at night, or you know, whatever it is that you want to do, taking that time and really setting it for yourself as, okay, I'm putting my phone on do not disturb. I'm not going to answer emails. I'm not going to answer text messages, kind of like protecting your peace, if you will. I think that's really, really insightful. And definitely something I wish I would have done earlier in my career, is to set those boundaries as well. So if you can kind of start to practice that now, I think that really will set you up for success in the future as well, having those boundaries and saying, this is me time. And so I'm not willing to sacrifice that because largely what we do, it'll be there tomorrow, right? So I think that's really, really important. I think I did see a hand in the back of the room as well.
Yeah, we should talk about it.
I think Jago has his hand up in the room.
Am I good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. This is one of my personal beliefs that I even use today, like with like, my work, my part-time work and my schoolwork, is that I think it's really important to get an adequate amount of sleep because there's a direct correlation with the amount of sleep you get and productivity. So you schedule in that proper sleep and you actually become more productive during your day. So then you don't have all these projects piling up to make you have to do overtime work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, thinking about there's not a lot of work specifically looking at well-being, but things like sleep can definitely impact your ability to be successful in your career, in your everyday life, that sort of thing. Another thing that really comes into play, I think, with athletics specifically, is thinking about vacation. And so how do employees in your department utilize their vacation? Do they feel like they can utilize their vacation? Because I know that's a challenge for a lot of folks, is figuring out a time when they feel like they can leave the office for an extended period of time, or just the ability to miss events. So like we've talked to employees before where they have missed weddings, birthdays, funerals, anniversaries, that sort of thing, because they didn't want to miss a football game or a basketball game or something like that. So figuring out how can you navigate what's important to you and taking that time off, because that is another way that you can really set yourself up for success, is to take a vacation and focus on yourself. Again, like you said, turn your work phone off, leave your work computer at work, and focus on those sorts of things. So thinking about, obviously we know this conflict, and in this instance, in this research paper, the conflict decreases burnout, but there are a number of other ways that we can decrease burnout as well. So a couple related articles, and these are ahead of print, so they haven't been widely distributed yet, but one of them that I'm really excited to come out, we talked to former coaches. So we interviewed 12 former Division I swim coaches about their reasoning for leaving the industry. And a lot of what they talked about relates to this idea of burnout, the overwork culture. A lot of them talked about recruiting and how it was a never-ending kind of game where they would constantly be calling recruits and texting recruits, and that often did happen outside of the work hours because of the recruits class and practice schedule. So thinking about how specifically we support our coaches, and how we offer them supports, whether it's more assistant coaches or supports through director of operations positions or that sort of thing. A lot of what they talked about was their reasoning for getting into coaching as well. And this was something that I had specifically experienced, was I didn't know what else to do. As a former athlete, I was like, well, I really enjoy volleyball. I'm not sure what I want to do with my life, so I might as well go and see if this works out. So a lot of them talked about, I had a degree in finance, or I had a degree in education or psychology or engineering, but I didn't really know what that entailed. So I was offered this GA position, or I was offered this assistant coach's position. And so I thought I should jump on it. So thinking too about the way in which we support our current athletes in their career navigations and what that looks like. Are we setting them up for success outside of the field or the court or the pool or that sort of thing? Because a lot of them talked about, I never thought that I would be a coach. I just kind of fell into this. A lot of them also talked about, and you experienced this through school, the impacts of COVID, and allowing them to take some time to step back, right? So they weren't able to go into the office, seasons were canceled, competitions were canceled, and so they were really able to be at home more. They were able to engage with their family more, take a step back from their work. And what they found was that they didn't need to work 100 hours a week, that they could be successful in their career if they were only working 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week. And that was something that they didn't want to continue to go back to that overwork culture, because they had kind of had a taste of what it was like, and they knew that they could be successful outside of that kind of culture. The other piece on here is looking at turnover intent. And so what we did in a survey is we asked employees in their, if they thought about leaving their career or their industry, and if they intended to leave in the next year. And something that we found is that in our sample of close to just over 4,600 people, nobody wanted to leave the industry. So they were kind of acknowledging like there is a certain level of overwork culture that we have to agree to participate or to be employed in the sport industry, but they were willing to leave their department and search for a new one. And so thinking what this means, not for the industry, but for a specific athletic department. So say that there is an athletic department, maybe it's Temple, and they have a very heavy overwork culture. But I hear from my friends at East Stroudsburg that they have a better culture, that they have access to better employee supports. They have an AD who really encourages folks to take vacation, that sort of thing. I'm not willing to leave sport holistically, but I am willing to leave my current institution and go and find a job at a different institution. So thinking about what does this mean for the industry? If people are willing to leave athletic departments, how does that impact the athletic department, that they have to now go and hire and train a new employee, because there's a lot of costs associated with hiring and training employees. So thinking about how do the supports that we offer directly impact an employee's want to stay at our department, or in the industry more broadly. As we see shifts coming from COVID. So now everyone's had a little bit of a taste of work from home. We know that you can be more productive, not having to commute. We know it's not always the best to go into the office. Maybe you prefer to work from home in your pajamas or whatever that may be. We are seeing folks leave the industry at a higher rate. And it's higher than other similar industries. So if we compare it to higher education, the turnover rate in sport is higher. If we compare it to some business sectors that have similar cultures of overwork, the turnover rate of sport is higher. And so thinking about if we want to keep the best employees, what sorts of supports do we have to offer them? Because as you know, salaries are sometimes limited. Budgets are tightening at all higher ed institutions, whether we're talking for academics or athletics. So if we are thinking about how can we entice employees to stay, we really have to start thinking about some of the supports that we offer them, which leads into kind of some of the current work, where the industry is going. And some of the work that I've been doing is looking at two specific areas. One is specific to women, so looking at their experiences of harassment. The reason that Dr. Dixon and Dr. McGarry started doing their interviews with women coaches first was because there was literature to suggest that women coaches were discriminated against and faced additional barriers of harassment, sexism, that sort of thing. So thinking about how do hostile climates towards women impact their experiences as employees? And then thinking about how can we further investigate the culture in organizations. So I just finished a project where we interviewed employees and their partners to get the perspective of their partner. So as a coach's wife or husband, as an athletic director's wife or husband, what is your experience like? How does your partner contribute to the childcare or the housework or that sort of thing? So just trying to get at different aspects of this relationship. And then as we think about how work in general is changing, how do things like remote work opportunities or a lack of remote work opportunities impact an employee? So something that is unique to sport is there are always going to be instances and positions that aren't able to have remote work. If you're in ticket sales, and you have to be at the facility. If you're in grounds crew, you have to be at the facility. If you're a coach on game day, you can't work remotely. So I think there are some instances in sport that are unique, and we kind of have to work through what those mean and how they impact the experiences of our employees as we think about their future. I know I just threw a lot of information at you. So I want to answer questions that you have. I can go back to slides. I can talk through things further, clarify any information, but I do want to open it up for questions, thoughts, general discussions, that sort of thing.
What would be considered work balance?
Yeah. So this is a new concept that's coming out. So a lot of what we talk about now in terms of work life, the life portion of it isn't considered work because it's unpaid labor. So things like cooking, childcare, housework, anything that you do outside of your work life, more or less. So your actual job, anything that you do, care for elderly parents, that sort of thing, is actually should be considered work, but it's just not compensated. And so how does that impact the way that we're able to work? How does that impact our well-being, that sort of thing? Kind of navigating those spaces of unpaid labor. And it's very gendered typically. So thinking about how we know women provide most of the childcare in heterosexual relationships with kids. How do women who do more housework, like that sort of thing? How does the like the idea of the work never stops, it's just not compensated work, how does that impact the relationship?
Thank you. Other questions? I have a question. I know in your research and also in our class, we talk about coaching a lot. But we are sport management, and I think our students, although some of them may go to coaching, probably I hope most of you do still focus on the business and management side of sports. In your research, I know you talk to lots of different people. Do you think there's a difference in coach and non-coach, like more administrative and business people? Do they experience work-life balance differently? Is it more of a bigger problem just for coach, or is it the same?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that they might experience it differently, but I think it's present in both careers. So I think for a coach, there is an off season, right? So there's a period where you're not practicing as much, you're not traveling as much, but that, especially at the Division I level, a lot of that time is spent recruiting. So there might be traveling in different ways. You're not traveling to participate in competitions, but you're traveling to recruit at competitions. But there is typically some sort of downtime in coaching when you're in the off season. Whereas for administrators, again, especially at the Division I level, when you have sports every season, it tends to lend itself to less downtime. So employees are rushing to take their vacation, in a 2-week period in June versus maybe you coach a spring sport and you're taking your vacations in the fall, or you coach a fall sport and you're taking your vacations over your kids' spring break or something like that. So I think they both have challenges associated with work-life balance, but just the way that they manifest themselves might be different. There might be additional pressures for coaches around things like winning, whereas an athletic director might have more like holistic pressure for the athletic department to be successful as a whole. But if one team is bad, that's okay. So I think, again, there's challenges associated with both career paths, but the way that they manifest themselves is different.
Questions?
I have a question. I got a question. You said you talked to people who took position as graduate assistants. Did they look at the job description and what it entailed?
Did they do that before they took the position?
Yeah, because you said it was a position that they said that they should just jump on.
Can you say that again?
Because you said earlier that they saw a graduate assistant position like after playing and they just decided to jump on it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes, I get what you're saying. So essentially what they were kind of saying is they didn't know what to do. And so they saw this graduate assistant position or the assistant coaching position, and they thought, well, I was a successful athlete. I could go and do this and get my master's, or I could go and do this and work for a couple of years and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. So they knew what they were getting into. I'm not sure if that answers your question. They knew what they were getting into, but it just wasn't the career path that they thought that they were going to take, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And that doesn't make it wrong. They were just saying in their instance that they maybe they had a degree in finance and they went and took a job as an assistant coach and thought maybe in 3 or 4 years I'll get out of this. And then 10 years down the road, they were still in coaching and had kind of through a series of instances discovered this isn't for me. And a lot of them, it was COVID that drove them out of the industry.
No question. I have a ton of questions. I just don't want to. I want to take all the students' chance. Liz, I really like your first question about, because you said we all like work-life balance, and why can't we just wake up one day and say we work less hours and let's be more efficient? And Rachel's comment about the work phone remind me of, because my husband, he's an engineer. So he has his work laptop. So whatever he needs to work, he needs to get to his work laptop, and we don't see that in sport. And I also have some friends working in tech, the IT industry, and all those companies are really promoting their work-life balance, and that's a big attraction for how they hire people. And we never see that in sports. So from your perspective, based of your experience and your research, why this is such a big problem in sports? Because we are supposed to be a happy place and a happy industry, but why the reality is kind of the awful.
Yeah, no, I think that's the $1 million question. Because we see a lot of other industries, they've been for years utilizing things like remote work, ability to telecommute a couple days, using Skype before Zoom really came around to do virtual meetings and that sort of thing. I think to the point about like, what does it mean when the coach says we just need to work harder? I think this idea of like being in the office signifies working, being in the gym signifies that you're practicing, meeting with your team to go over film or condition or do that sort of thing has really always been the signal that you're working hard. And so I think pre-COVID, the industry just hadn't even thought about what it would be like to offer remote work opportunities or what it would be like to cut back on the number of hours worked or the number of days a week worked. You'll see it, I'm sure you've seen it before for people who work in athletics, they just talk about the grind, right? You get no days off, you're working 12, 15-hour days. And so it kind of has become like a badge of honor. The more you work, that kind of indicates that you're more dedicated, that indicates that you care more, you're investing more. And so I think it just really was what we were focused on as an industry without thinking about the repercussions of it, because people wanted to be there so bad. And so there is research on vocational calling and kind of like your reasoning for being in your career. And so people were really willing to make those sacrifices because they wanted to be in college athletics. They wanted to be a coach. They wanted to be you know, a strength and conditioning coach or an athletic trainer or academic support for athletes, that sort of thing, that their passion led them to this career. And so they wanted to offer everything they could. And a lot of what that meant was long hours. But I think to your point, we are starting to lose employees because they realize, okay, I work in marketing for an athletic department. I can go and work for a tech company, or I can go and work for an agency or any other company and work in their marketing department and have better work-life balance, be paid more, get more vacation, have better parental leave, that sort of thing. So I think that's the $1 million question. And I don't have a perfect answer for it, but I think it is really causing folks to leave the industry because they're looking for better working conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope, because we are all part of this industry, if we all can have more work-life balance, that would be great. How is work-life balance at Temple?
So I think in terms of the athletic department, we got a new athletic director this year. And I have heard really great things about him. There's been a ton of turnover. We've hired a new football coach, new men's basketball coach, new women's basketball coach, new volleyball coach, men's soccer. So I'm hopeful that as they continue to like bring in new folks, that the culture stays really positive. But from what I hear, it's the turnover has been really good turnover, and they've hired new folks who are supporting the athletes better, who are supporting the assistant coaches and the support staff better, which I think is really important. A lot of what we've heard from folks is that the head coach kind of sets the tone. And so if they're modeling good behavior, everyone else can kind of act accordingly.
Great to hear that. Two more questions. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Joining us. Yeah, people are waving hands, but I'm talking here, so you can.
Of course. If anyone has questions, wants to follow up, wants to hear my rantings on social media, this is mostly what I talk about on Twitter. So feel free to follow up if you have questions, want to chat more about this or that sort of thing. I'm happy to talk about this topic all day. So thanks for having me, and let me know if I can share any other information.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the
Awesome.
rest.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. Let me unshare my screen. All right. Cool. Well, everyone have a great night and enjoy the rest of your class.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
see you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Jacqueline, you need to stay.
I'm just saying hello to everybody.
Do you want to take a break and come back, or we're good? So I think we already had lots of discussion about work-life balance, so we don't have to go to that part of your questions. How do you like Dr. Liz Taylor's presentation?
She was very informative.
You like it?
Yeah.
I thought she was good.
Why there were more questions then? Why you all didn't ask questions?
She's good explaining what the other.
Yeah.
Man, I have no questions to.
She covered a lot of the questions that I had, so I didn't have any more. And then just took my last question on work
I was
balance.
just confused when I saw it.
Yeah, I was like,
Okay, that's good. I'm glad that you liked her information she gave. She is doing some of the most, I would not use the word cutting edge because it's not technology and it's really easy to understand, but it's really very relevant. Before she did all of this work about women working in sport and work-life balance, there was really no one caring about this. And we can just see how relevant it is. My other question is, do you like the questions that I asked her? You can say that you don't like. Do you think my questions are relevant? Yeah. So see, you can always come up with some questions to ask. Even if that person has already covered a lot. You see that? So when you are listening to someone, you can't sit back. I'm talking about this because you're a grad student, are not undergrad. If I'm in an undergrad class, I probably won't talk about it because you have more time to grow. Now you're a graduate, you're older, right? Although you're also Generation Z. But my expectation for you is a lot higher than if you're my undergrad student. So you can always come up with questions to ask. That was one thing that I learned when I was at Temple. Because my advisor, he wants me to ask questions all the time. If I don't ask a question when there's a presentation, he will talk to me after class, after presentation, and he asked me, why didn't you ask questions? That's just how harsh he was on me. And I feel frustrated, but that has got me into the habit of asking questions and being professional. How many of you check your phone or check your laptop and was not really paying attention? Some of you. How many of you check your phone? How many of you use your laptop and not for the purpose of taking notes? I'm not trying to kind of embarrass anyone. We see this all the time in class.
I was
How
soaking
many-
it all up. I thought she was great.
Yeah, and how many of you stood up and left for a couple minutes? I mean, it's understandable. It's not the best that you could do, you know? So that's something I learned. I know there could be some generational difference, and Generation Z act the way they want to act, and there's nothing wrong with leaving the room, go to the restroom and come back, but you could have done that before the class, right? For all class, I see students leaving the classroom all the time and come back. Is that acceptable? That's actually not very acceptable. Think about one day you go to we're talking a lot in this class, and I talking about this because this will be our last lecture. And this class we talk about DEI, but it's about DEI in the workplace. Okay, not DEI from a consumer standpoint. We want to focus on workplace culture, and you all are working. Probably still in a very kind of early stage, but you need to realize how you sell, what is your brand, right? How you dress, how you talk, how you behave, how you talk to people. Do you ask questions? Sometimes people don't really care what question you ask. It can be a dumb question, but as long as you ask, it shows that you care and you create that conversation and a connection. That's all it matters. So pay attention to everything you do and really set yourself up to a high standard. Okay. At ESU, coming from bigger institutions, because of my background, at ESU, lots of these things are not held to a very high standard professionally. I want you to know that. Once you go to the other companies, if you go to D1, their standard of everything is much higher. Okay, you probably have an even lower work-life balance, and you're expected to be a lot more professional. So that's something you need to be aware of. Okay, I know I might sound very scary right now. It's just to let you know you all can do a lot better. Her presentation, part of it was very academic. She talked about the articles, but you can see that her flowed very smoothly, right? He was very well prepared, and he got 2 kids. He got a family. He also is doing assistant volleyball.
Is she doing that?
She's involved in her husband's trying.
Yeah, so she has a full-time job at Temple, like me, and much more intense. She does volleyball. She coached volleyball, she has 2 kids. She has lots of things on her plate, maybe, I think, maybe a lot more than what you all have. And look at the presentation she has. The content, right, the visual elements goes very well together. And of course, she is much older and more experienced, but that is what you need to work towards. Right, that should be your goal. She used to be an athlete. She did not come from a very kind of like very prestigious university or the background, but you can see that that might be a possibility. Okay, if you become a professor, much better work-life balance. You can become a professor in sport management. I see that potential in many of them. You can consider it. Okay. So do you have some, do you want to kind of still talk about some of the articles and questions? Are there
I
some?
mean, we just had, it was like more work-life balance, but the one was talking about like, just like fathers. versus
Okay.
mothers.
So probably we can do 1 or 2 that you think just key questions you really want us to talk about, and then we call it. One or 2, maybe 10 or 15 more minutes. Okay.
John, how we going?
We had a 1-year overlap at Temple. I was a PhD and she started at Temple. I was in the committee, the search committee that hired her.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's how we got that relationship, and we call it past.
What was you teach?
Sport and society. It's like the psychosocial.
Oh,
It's a fun class, and it's a huge class, like 18 students.
you say 18?
Yeah, 80.
Who's that? Okay.
So let's do a couple more questions or discussion.
I would be cheating, man.
Oh, good, man. Thank you. Thank you.
So another one of the articles talked about coach fathers, because like she said, a lot of the research has been on women and their family life. But then, so it says, due to the changing father expectations in society, fathers are having more trouble balancing work and family. What ways do you think these individuals could cope with the work-family conflict? And like she mentioned, it's kind of changing the roles of mother and father, so society wants fathers to be more involved with their children, all that kind of stuff, and like she said, like, they don't want to be just a good disciplinary and then leave. So what ways do you think that they could cope with this conflict that a lot of them are having?
I think that's into sport, honestly. I just think that some sports are more demanding than others, or like getting them together and planning and watching film and stuff like that. That takes more time away from your family. I mean, a lot of times you see like a lot of times you see churches bring their kids to the office and like selling with daddy brothers and like stuff like that, but I think as far as just like how would they would work their conflict like this. There's gonna be some type of give and take that we use for it, like, you know, I have to do this and look at who I'm missing out on. So don't like, just to take the ball, for example, like during the fall, like obviously they're all in on football, they have to be traveling every day and doing different practices and stuff like that. But when they're not in season, like they have to really catch up on time that they miss, like being there for their sons and daughters and like doing different things on them. And really show them like, hey, like you are first, like don't do that, like you're not, this job is still a job, you're not enjoy doing because you're my son or daughter, like you're my kid, and I like I do enjoy you, so. I just think that's just kind of the sport and how you, handle
Yeah, in the article they mentioned a lot of the coaches, that were fathers said that they relied heavily on their wives. During season and stuff, so maybe outside of season, doing more things to kind of like change those roles a little bit.
Other thoughts?
Just one thing I think very interesting about this article in your finding is, this father coaches, how they frame work family conflict versus family work conflict. Yeah, when is it your next?
It's not our last one, but it was before, yeah.
Yeah, so you remember in the finding, when this coaches, when they have to.
So it was kind of like work, family conflict versus family work conflict. So work, family conflict is when your family, is when work like takes time away from your family. But then family work conflict was that family takes time away from your work. But they said it was just a lot more, we're talking about work, family versus family work.
Yeah, a lot more, and also they frame it in a very different way, when they have to, when their family are taking away their work time, they say, I hate this, right, I hate missing practice. But when their work has to take their family time, they just take that as something is unfortunate, but it's something that I have to do. Do you remember that? I think that contrasting way of framing is very.
They just make it seem like family is like an obligation, when your work is something that like you want to do basically. When in reality, like it should be kind of framed the opposite way of like, you know, like they said, like, oh, I hate missing practice, it should be like, I hate missing time with my family, while as like. You're pretty much just, you're making it seem as though like your work is more important than your family.
When you say that, it reminds me of my husband, like. When I think about him, I can never imagine him saying, I hate making time with my kid. I feel like he would love it if he can miss the time, because it's really more work. That's why it's work-life balance, because I can't imagine him saying that. I think that might be the mindset of some of the men. I'm not a man, I can't talk on behalf of the men. But to me, it seems like they are way more passionate about their work than about their family.
You think the fathers are?
Yeah, this father. You have something to say?
it.
Oh, Jacko.
I think with this, with the work-life balance is something that you really got to dig deep and look within yourself about, and what you really prioritize. Like if you're a coach, or in one of those positions where you have to spend a lot of time, where you have to sacrifice one or the other. And if you're able to balance it, that's great. If you can schedule your time properly and balance it, that's great. But you really have to see what kind of individual you are and what you're okay with missing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jocko, and I didn't agree with Dr. Taylor. Like you have to explain, and you got to find things that are important to you. You know what I'm saying? I learned that from Jimmy. I'm going to take my daughter to work. I'm going to take my daughter to school every morning. I'm going to be home for dinner. And that's non-negotiable, right? And you got to make that clear when you take a job like this. So like nobody's holding a gun to his head to be at practice, but he's going to be there because he cares about it. But like I want to take my kid to school in the morning. I want to kiss them, make sure they have a good day. I'm going to be there before they close their eyes. So like you just got to make that stuff clear to whoever you're working with and people you're hiring. Like you can balance it if you want to. That's what I think. If you can balance it if you want to.
I'm not gonna be as fired up as Corona, as kids are fired up. No, I like Coach String is man of many words, what a guy. But his priorities is we talk about this a lot, I do a lot of different things, and I don't have a lot of like me time as far as like playing Xbox, stuff like that, like, I don't have time to just hang out. Try to do everything into sun, but we talk about like, listen, like, it's it's a priority to me, like, it's the most important meetings of my day. I have 3 most important meetings of my day. It's the meeting with my daughter, the meeting with my meeting with me, my time, because I know who I am, and I can just debrief and just go hunting, go fishing, go for a run, something like that. And then my second meeting with my family, those are the 3 meetings, most important meetings of my day. Those are not go through, they happen every day, and you can't go through life without those 3 meetings, and I think that's just an example, like, making something a priority and making sure that you meet that priority no matter what your job is. And I think as far as like, from a football perspective, like, from a head coach, like, you can build your life around you can build your practice schedule and stuff like that, like, around your personal life. Not as far as like playing games and travel wise, that's obviously something that is what it is, but as far as like practices, as far as being there, as far as doing what you do, like, you can definitely build your life around what you need to do as far as you can build. So I don't think that. I mean, it's obviously it's hard, but it's not like you just have to sit down and say, okay, these are what important to me, these are not negotiable, everything else is working around, but that's what it is.
There's a difference between finding time and then making time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that personal, you said we don't care about our children, that's not the case at all, it's just like.
I can picture put lots of salt on that. It's nice. Well,
In my opinion, I think that it's different because when you do go to work, it's very objective, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna get these results. And as you spend time with your family, it's very subjective, like, you're spending, it's more long term, it's a relationship you build with your family, you can't see it every day, you can't see it right away, what you're doing, but long term, you create these relations with the families, and then it shapes how you view them and how they view you. So I think it's how the work gets more.
looks like we got some very good future husbands.
Yes, but another great example of this is like LeBron James and like Kobe Bryant, when their kids are playing and he hasn't, unless he's playing, he's after me. But he's not always very supportive, he just traveling about and being a good mom and dad, like, that's something that he finds important, what I mean, so like, and Kobe Bryant too, when she and everything like that, he was always tripping her games, always out her games, no matter what he had going on, he find a way to work it out, that specific day of time. Now, there's some things you miss because of travel and stuff like that, doesn't come to the sport, and being the sport industry, but as far as making like time for that specific day of lunch, like I said, as long as you know that that's important, you can't. But in that factor, like a no factor, and you know what they time for.
Why are you shaking your head?
Huh?
Why are you shaking your head?
Well, I really like we have some good role models, like your coach, the football coach, and LeBron James. And Kobe Bryant, they're role models. So let me ask you,
Yeah, talk to me.
you're gonna graduate, right?
Sure.
And you want to get a job?
Hope so.
And let's say you go to a job interview, and where you want to work,
Where I wanna work?
yeah.
It's Josh, I don't know what I wanna do, let's just say I'm working for, so I'm working for Michigan Gaming Operations.
Okay, great. And just in the interview or when you are talking to them, you express that you have this, and that, you have 3 family obligations that is your priority, and because of that, you can't make it to certain meetings and factors. Do you feel like you want to do that? Do you feel comfortable doing it?
No, but the conversation wouldn't go like that, it would go, they would know by how walking the door, how important my family is to me. So if I, like, some way of me messing up and not being a smart individual and screwing my life over and having little children, they will know that how important these children are to me, how that's like my life, and I need to be there for my children, and this job for me, I love this job, but these children are everything to me. So the conversation wouldn't be like, hey, listen, I can't do this because my daughter has a dance recital or whatever. It would be like, okay, these are my hours, okay. What can I do within these hours that I can move these hours up or forward so that I can still be able to go to like my daughter's dance recital and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very good, because I don't want us to get into the mindset that we can we can, you have something to say?
Yes, Jessica?
You gonna say?
Yeah, you gotta kind of, do that in a very smart. and
Yeah,
strategic
for sure.
Because when you say that have football coach and those two examples, they have the ability to negotiate whatever they want. And when we all, like, even for me, we don't have lots of things to use to negotiate, you know what that means? So I was on a search committee and look for people to get work here, and she is 50s or 60 something. She is a lot older and she has a mother who is here. And that's the reason why she wants to apply to get a job here, not in sport management. And because she mentioned that, that became a discussion of the search committee because the search committee chair was concerned about she had to spend lots of time with her mom to take care of her mom. Well, we know that this position we're looking to hire is a very demanding job. So because she mentioned that, she is out of the name. So it's just some insider stories to let you know, to be more strategic. My advice is to get the position first. And then once you get into it, figure out a way to live a happy life.
My biggest thing is like, you said it's a very demanding position, but obviously reading the qualifications and talking to, going through the process, she knows what demanding it is. But yet she still applied. So if she's still gonna apply and knowing how demanding it is, obviously in the back of her head, she has some type of plan where she can go do her job the best ability she can, like contribute to her way, and still be able to give her mother everything to do, for her to be similar to her life.
So, well, I'm just letting you all know from, the other side of it. Because you probably haven't been in a search committee and you don't know what these people are saying. So it's like when you hire someone, it's a big thing for them. It's also a big thing for you. It's a big commission. And you want to be very, very sure that this person can do the job. So it's just something FYI.
John got something to say.
I was gonna say, this meeting, I know it's getting tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jessica?
Yeah, that same, going off that same scenario that you posted to Darren, it's kind of like, you show up to this job and if you really, really are committed to your family like that, and those are your must do's, and they're not willing to, work with you on that, then you might just have to say, okay, this is not the place for me. And vice versa. I mean, if you really, like, if you're like, screw my family, I'm gonna work here, then that's your prerogative. But I think it's really about finding the right situation for yourself.
Yeah, I think finding the match, the fit, between you and the company. You have your number?
Yeah.
You got a divorce, because he quit football over his thing.
And then he guys will fully retire.
You guys was being tired and then came back. So it's tired.
He quit football over his thing.
And he started to attack his wife on social media.
Yeah, he started to, I bet he was.
Harry, you have something for that?
I was gonna go over the search committee thing, how, well, in the person applying for it and knowing that it's probably gonna be a rigorous job that requires a lot. Do you think it would be the committee's responsibility to, I guess, explain that to them? Like, I would assume that they know that the position it requires a lot. That's kind of, I would think that's why they apply. But then also for it to be taken out of a running position because the committee thinks that they won't be all the way in is,
Because the reality is that there are a lot of candidates normally because the pool is big. Instead of trying to figure out the chance with someone, they usually go with the and I think the competition will just be, it will just be more competitive in your world. More entry level in the real industry. We got a lot, hundreds of applicants for one position, so unless you have some really outstanding background and abilities, and that's what we should be working on. If you want to work like that, you need to make people feel like you are worth for like that. So unfortunately, I think that's the reality. That is not my. But still
We're good.
be optimistic.
Yeah.
That all we have? Okay, very good. So. Today would be the final discussion session we have. We have, before the final week, we have 2 more weeks. And I think we need to meet to get your project. I don't know what groups are doing. And I think next time, instead of like what we did by having the set meeting time, let's all just come to class and just, you can work in groups and we can talk. If you feel very, very sure about what you are doing and you don't feel like you need to talk to me, I'm also fine with it, because in the end, you get a grade. I give you the grade. I don't, the consequence is not on me. So you just evaluate your own situation and, but anyway, I will be here from 4 to 5. So if you want to ask me a question, if you want to get any feedback, I will be here, including if you need some more information about how to write the final essay. So my suggestion is to come here, and I'm not gonna lecture because you all are doing very different things at very different stages. So I won't feel like any lecture will apply to all. So it will just be meetings, and you can be here, you can ask questions and stay for 10 minutes and you can leave.
Joe's gonna lecture that day, if we get here.
Oh, very good.
We'll put on the clinic.
Wait, is it for next week? or-
Yeah, it's for next week. The presentation will be in the final week. I think it's May 1st. May 1st. So you've got 3 more weeks. to project.
Yeah, I mean, Eric,
Well, if you want to stop by my office at any time, you can do that. So we don't have to be here Monday afternoon. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. How are you feeling? I'm feeling fine?
Yo.
No?
I
I don't know them kids.
Are you feeling okay?
Doctor, it's your phone, bro.
See you.
was dead.
Hear me talking?
I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, you look like you're suffering from something.
Well, the
Okay.
first 30 minutes of the lecture, I was regurgitating in the bathroom.
Well, take care.
Bye.
Better.
Thank you.